Something happened on March 13, 2026 that the White House has not announced at a press conference. The Pentagon has not confirmed in a briefing. And no cabinet secretary has put in a single coherent sentence for the American public. The USS Tripoli, an 855-foot amphibious assault ship carrying 20 F-35B stealth jets, MV-22 Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, and 2,200 Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, is sailing from Japan toward the Middle East right now. It left its home port at Sasebo. It is heading for the Strait of Hormuz, and it is bringing with it the military capability to do something that 3 U.S. aircraft carriers, 50,000 deployed troops, and 2 weeks of the most intensive American bombing campaign since Iraq have not yet done. Force that strait back open. The Wall Street Journal confirmed it. AP confirmed it. Military Times confirmed it. 3 U.S. officials confirmed it to ABC News. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth approved the CENTCOM request personally. The USS Tripoli is moving. And the question that every shipping executive, every oil trader, every energy minister in Europe and Asia is asking right now is the same question that a classified congressional briefing this week could not get a straight answer to. Can the United States actually do this? Can America forcefully reopen the most contested 21 miles of ocean on Earth? Against an enemy that has already said it welcomes the attempt? Stay with us, because the answer involves a number nobody in the administration is saying on camera. And that number determines whether the USS Tripoli is sailing toward a solution or toward the most dangerous naval confrontation since the Second World War. Subscribe right now and hit the bell, because by the end of this video you will understand exactly what the USS Tripoli deployment actually means militarily, what happens in the next 24 to 72 hours before any escort operation can begin, why Iran's IRGC publicly said it welcomes a U.S. escort attempt, and what CNN confirmed this week that the Pentagon and White House are still refusing to admit publicly. The Tripoli is moving. The question is, what is waiting for it? Let's start with what is actually in that strait right now. Because the official language, Iran is disrupting shipping, does not describe what is sitting in 21 miles of water. Since March 4th, the IRGC has declared the strait closed and is enforcing that closure with mines, drone boats, shore-based cruise missiles, midget submarines, and fast attack vessels operating from tunnel complexes buried in Iranian coastal mountains. Lloyd's List confirmed this week that only 77 ships crossed the Strait of Hormuz in the first 13 days of March. In the same period last year, 1,229. Historically, 138 ships transited every 24 hours. Now the daily figure is in single digits, and most of those are shadow fleet vessels running dark without identification signals or ships broadcasting Chinese and Iranian ownership to get through. The IRGC Naval Commander Alireza Tangsiri stated it explicitly. Any ship aiming to pass through the Strait of Hormuz must obtain Iran's approval or face attack. Iran is operating a checkpoint system on the world's most important oil waterway, and the U.S. Navy has not escorted a single commercial vessel through it. Not one. Energy Secretary Chris Wright posted on social media this week that the Navy had successfully escorted a tanker through. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed the claim was not true. Wright deleted the post. American crude prices moved $10 on that deleted post before correcting. The global energy system is now reacting in real time to statements that the U.S. government cannot keep straight. And the Congressional Research Service delivered a classified briefing to senators this week. Multiple lawmakers pressed top officials about the lack of an operational plan to reopen the strait. An administration official disputed that there were no plans. But nobody in that classified room got a timeline. Nobody got a specific operational answer. CNN confirmed it this week. The Pentagon and National Security Council significantly underestimated Iran's willingness to close the Strait of Hormuz while planning this operation. A former U.S. official who served in both Republican and Democratic administrations told CNN directly, "Planning around preventing this exact scenario has been a bedrock principle of U.S. national security policy for decades. I am dumbfounded." That quote is from a former senior U.S. official. Dumbfounded. While the strait has been closed for 2 weeks, drop a comment right now. CNN confirmed the Pentagon significantly underestimated Iran's willingness to close the strait. The Energy Secretary falsely claimed a tanker had been escorted through and deleted the post, and senators in a classified briefing could not get a straight operational answer. Tell us what you think this says about the planning behind Operation Epic Fury. Now here is exactly what has to happen before the USS Tripoli can escort a single tanker. Because this is the part no broadcast is explaining. And it is why Energy Secretary Wright said we are simply not ready. Not today. Not this week. The Congressional Research Service report delivered to Congress on March 11th laid out the sequence clearly. Before escort operations can begin, the U.S. military must first destroy or suppress Iran's land-based anti-ship missile batteries along the strait. Axios confirmed this week that U.S. military planners are specifically working on operations to take out those land-based systems as a precondition for escort attempts. These are shore-launched cruise missiles and anti-ship ballistic missiles positioned along Iran's extensive Persian Gulf coastline. They can hit a moving tanker. They can hit a destroyer. They can hit the USS Tripoli itself from positions buried in coastal terrain that has survived 2 weeks of the most intensive American bombing campaign since Iraq. CENTCOM confirmed it has struck approximately 6,000 targets inside Iran. Over 60 Iranian ships eliminated. 30-plus mine layers destroyed. Hegseth claims Iran's missile capability is down 90% and drone capability down 95%. If those numbers are accurate, suppressing the remaining land-based anti-ship systems should be achievable. But the Congressional Research Service noted explicitly, such an effort would likely take some time, days, weeks, or perhaps months, depending on what forms an Iranian attempt to close the Gulf to shipping might take. Days, weeks, or months. That is the official U.S. government assessment delivered to Congress 3 days ago. And then there are the mines. Iran's mines are sitting on the seafloor. You cannot bomb them from 40,000 feet. You need minesweepers, ships that move slowly through a minefield with specialized equipment to detect and destroy mines one by one. Ships that are completely exposed to the shore-launched missiles, drone boats, and fast attack craft that Iran still has in those coastal tunnels. The U.S. Navy decommissioned its last 4 dedicated minesweepers in the Persian Gulf in September 2025. 0 specialized mine countermeasures vessels are currently deployed in the region. The USS Tripoli brings F-35Bs and Marines. It does not bring minesweepers. Former French Vice Admiral Pascal Aussure told the Associated Press directly, sending warships or civilians into the strait under current conditions would be suicidal. That is a serving vice admiral using the word suicidal about the plan the USS Tripoli is sailing toward. If this is giving you the operational reality behind the headlines that no broadcast assembled when they reported the Tripoli deployment this morning, share this video right now. Because the difference between what the administration is saying publicly and what the CRS delivered to Congress privately is not a small gap. It is the size of a deleted social media post from a cabinet secretary and a classified briefing where nobody got a timeline. Now look at what Iran actually said when it heard the escort plan was coming. Because this is the line that should be on the front page of every newspaper in the world, and is not. The Iranian military did not threaten to close the strait if the U.S. tried to escort tankers. It did not warn of consequences. It said something that is strategically more alarming than either of those responses. It said it welcomes the attempt. The IRGC stated directly, Iran would welcome the U.S. Navy escorting oil ships through the strait. It is prepared to strike U.S. forces in the narrow waterway. Read that. Iran is telling the United States, please come in. We are ready. That is not the language of a military that is desperate or running out of options. That is the language of a force that has studied how to fight inside a 21-mile corridor for 4 decades and believes the terrain favors the defender. And the terrain does favor the defender. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. The navigable channel is 2 miles wide in each direction. A $13 billion aircraft carrier must navigate a channel that is 2 miles wide while Iran operates from both shores simultaneously. Shore-based missiles, mines in the water, drone boats on the surface, midget submarines beneath, fast attack craft emerging from coastal tunnels. At 2 miles of navigable width, every system Iran still has is within lethal range of everything the U.S. Navy brings through. Former CIA Director General David Petraeus, who once commanded CENTCOM, stated on March 11th, "Iran's mine-laying presents a real challenge. The variety of mine types compounds the difficulty." He also said plainly, "Regime change is not going to happen." That is a former CENTCOM commander saying the strategic objective of the war that created this crisis is not achievable, while the crisis itself has no quick solution. Subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because the next 24 to 72 hours are when the operational picture becomes visible. The Tripoli is sailing. CENTCOM is targeting land-based anti-ship systems as a precondition, and Iran's new supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei made his position explicit in his very first public statement since taking power. He said the Strait of Hormuz must remain closed as a tool to pressure the enemy. His first words as supreme leader. Not a greeting. Not a statement of governance. A declaration that the strait stays shut. That is the man who controls Iran's military posture right now. And the USS Tripoli is sailing toward the waterway he just described as a tool of war. Now here's the scenario that plays out if the US attempts a forced reopening. And it is not the scenario the administration's press briefings describe. Phase 1. CENTCOM intensifies strikes on Iranian coastal anti-ship missile batteries over the next 72 hours. This is already happening. The week confirmed Trump ordered one of the most powerful bombing raids in Middle Eastern history on Karg Island this week, which he described as the crown jewel of Iran's strategic infrastructure. Trump said the U.S. deliberately avoided hitting Karg Island's oil infrastructure, but warned that restraint could be reconsidered if Iran continues blocking the strait. That warning is the leverage play. Bomb the anti-ship batteries. Threaten the oil infrastructure. Create enough pressure that Iran's calculus on the strait changes. Phase 2. Minesweeping begins under air and naval cover. This is where the plan becomes genuinely dangerous. Minesweeping requires slow, exposed vessels working inside the 2-mile navigable channel. Iran's shore-based cruise missiles, even degraded by 90%, still exist. Even one successful hit on a minesweeper halts the entire operation. Iran does not need to stop every U.S. ship. It needs to hit one. Phase 3. Escort operations begin with destroyers flanking tankers through cleared lanes. The USS Tripoli's F-35Bs provide air cover. The guided missile cruiser, USS Robert Smalls, and destroyer USS Rafael Peralta provide fleet defense. This configuration can theoretically move 3 to 4 commercial ships per day, according to the Congressional Research Service. Before this crisis, 138 ships transited every 24 hours. At 3 to 4 per day under fire with full naval escort, the strait is not open. It is a contested military corridor moving a fraction of its normal traffic. At $11.3 billion for the first 6 days of this war, the math of escorting 3 to 4 tankers per day against an adversary that can attack from both shores simultaneously is not a sustainable operation. It is a demonstration. And Iran knows the difference. Now look at what happens if Iran keeps blocking. Because this is the scenario where the economic consequences stop being abstract. As of today, 27% of the world's maritime crude oil trade and 20% of global LNG supply is stranded. Saudi Arabia is rerouting via the east-west pipeline to Yanbu on the Red Sea, but that pipeline can only handle a fraction of normal strait capacity. The deficit is approximately 12 million barrels per day that no alternative route can cover. And the Red Sea route itself is not safe. The Houthis have not entered this conflict yet, but their leadership has repeatedly said they are ready to act if Red Sea tanker traffic increases. Iran already struck the Omani bypass ports of Duqm and Salalah with drones this week, damaging fuel storage. The alternatives are being targeted before they can be used. Iraq and Kuwait have no pipeline alternative at all. Their oil is physically trapped. Gulf storage tanks are filling. When they are full, producers stop pumping regardless of whether they want to. India has already cut a bilateral deal directly with Iran to allow LPG tankers through. Countries are negotiating individually with Tehran, rather than waiting for Washington to solve a problem Washington is still calling temporary. That is the definition of a strategic failure. not military defeat. Countries cutting deals with the enemy because they cannot wait for the ally to deliver. And the IEA's release of 400 million barrels from emergency reserves, the largest coordinated drawdown in IEA history, covers approximately 10 to 12 days of global demand at normal consumption rates. The Strait has been closed for 13 days. The emergency reserve is already nearly consumed in timeline terms. Brent crude peaked at $126 per barrel this week. The IRGC's public forecast, $200 per barrel. European natural gas futures up 30% after Qatar went offline. American gasoline prices up 17% since February 28th. This is what 2 weeks of Strait closure looks like. The economic architecture of that closure does not improve with time. It compounds. Here is the complete picture as of March 13, 2026. The USS Tripoli is sailing from Japan with 2,200 Marines and 20 F-35Bs. It joins the USS Gerald R. Ford and USS Abraham Lincoln in a 3-carrier armada. 50,000 U.S. troops are deployed. CENTCOM has struck 6,000 targets in 2 weeks. The Pentagon says Iran's military capability is down 90%. The Strait is still closed. 77 ships in 13 days versus 1,229 in the same period last year. Iran's new supreme leader's first statement was that the Strait must remain shut. The IRGC said it welcomes the escort attempt. The Congressional Research Service said reopening could take days, weeks, or months. A former CENTCOM commander said regime change is not going to happen. A former senior U.S. official told CNN he is dumbfounded by the planning failure. The Energy Secretary deleted a post falsely claiming a tanker had been escorted through. Senators in a classified briefing could not get a timeline, and the plan before escorts can begin involves suppressing land-based anti-ship missiles, sweeping mines with no dedicated minesweepers, and navigating 2 miles of contested water with systems Iran has spent 40 years preparing to defeat inside exactly this corridor. The USS Tripoli is not a solution. It is a capability. Capabilities require plans. And the gap between the capability that is sailing and the plan that senators could not get a straight answer about in a classified briefing is the most important piece of water on Earth right now. 21 miles wide at its narrowest. 2 miles of navigable channel. And somewhere in the coastal mountains on the northern shore, in tunnel complexes that 2 weeks of bombing have not reached, Iran is watching the Tripoli sail and saying exactly what its military said publicly this week. Welcome. If you made it to the end of this video, you now understand why the USS Tripoli deployment is not a solution, and why the administration's own planning assumptions failed to account for the scenario that has now been running for 2 weeks. Subscribe. Share this with someone who thinks sending 2,200 Marines to the Middle East means the Strait is about to reopen. And drop a comment below. Because the Tripoli is sailing. Iran is waiting. The mines are still in the water. And the only thing the United States has not yet tried in this strait is the thing it is about to try. For the first time. Without minesweepers. Against an enemy that publicly said it is ready. 21 miles. 2 navigable. And the clock on Gulf storage tanks is already running. Welcome to the geopolitics of money.